Welcome to the John Clarence Gomez Show, and here's your host, John Clarence Gomez.
Welcome to the John Clarence Gomez Show, Mr. Alan Seals, the host of the Theater Podcast in Broadway Podcast Network. Welcome to my podcast.
Thank you, John. Thanks for having me. Sorry, I'm used to saying thanks for being here. That's my normal go-to.
And here is the question. What is the Theater Podcast? Can you tell us and our listener about your podcast?
Just in general, what it is. My tagline is intimate personal conversations with the industry's biggest names. It started out as just these amazing conversations with friends of mine, and it's just blossomed and gotten so much bigger ever since then. So it's an authentic. Every episode is an authentic conversation. I don't like the question and answer sort of thing. I just want to have a real conversation with people and hear their stories.
How did you create the Theater Podcast? How did it start?
On one sleepless night back in September, I think 2018. I think I'm coming up on 4 years of doing this. Wow. Yeah, I couldn't sleep one night. I was just literally looking on my phone, trying to find a podcast that would give me the type of conversations I wanted to have on my show now, which was essentially just these behind the scenes conversations, sort of talking about things that they don't normally talk about. And one of the things that really interested me was how they maintain their success, right? So I literally just couldn't find anything and rolled over, started going to GoDaddy.com looking for open domain names, found strangely that the theaterpodcast.com was available, so I grabbed it, and then I started texting my friends the next day and getting interviews lined up.
Are there famous Broadway stars? Are there famous Broadway stars that become your guests on the podcast, on your podcast, the Theater Podcast?
Are there famous guests?
Yes, famous Broadway stars.
Yeah. I mean, I've had Patti LuPone. She was my special episode 200. I mean, I everybody is sort of known for different things, like Kate Rockwell from Mean Girls and Ashley Park, who's of course all over TV now. She's made that crossover. Ariana DeBose, who's one of the biggest stars in the world right now. She was episode number 2 for me. She's one of my longtime friends. And yeah, so it's Broadway stars. It's branched out in the last 2 years really to add on TV and movie stars as well. So it keeps growing beyond the original idea, which is wonderful.
How many episodes of the Theater Podcast at this time? How many episodes?
Let's see. Today is a Tuesday, and I release every Tuesday at least, sometimes twice a week, depending on everything I've got going on. And today was episode 218, not including about 10 random bonuses. So I would say close to 230 some episodes. I'm going strong.
What is the best Broadway star and theater people or actors, even they are not famous, that you have met and interviewed in the Theater Podcast? The best episode.
Gosh, that's really hard to narrow it down, and I think I would be doing everyone else a disservice by naming one person. There are things that stick out for various reasons. There are firsts or great advice. Like I always end every episode with 3 standard closing questions, and one of which is, what advice would you give to your younger self and younger people listening now starting out down a similar path? And I think it was Michael Urie who said to me, be the person that people want to work with the next time. And that's stuck with me for a long, long time. Brandon Uranowitz, he had an amazing coming out story that was just incredibly insightful, and nice and inspirational. And Patty Murin, she was the first person I talked to that really dove into mental health and my own mental health as in that. So that was a first for me. So I really enjoy that. Um, it's really been sort of eye opening depending on who I'm talking to. Gosh, I mean, Danny Burstein. I interviewed him February 2020, right before Broadway shut down, and this was a few weeks after he and his wife, his late wife Rebecca Luker, had announced her ALS diagnosis. And so, like, we dove into talking about ALS and the fact that now he's preparing to lose his wife, and there's all these moments that I look back on, and if I look at every episode that I've recorded, I can probably pick out one particular moment from each of them that still I carry with me.
What is Broadway Podcast Network?
Ooh, the Broadway Podcast Network, BPN. That was born. It's okay. So the easy pitch is it's a Netflix of theater and theater adjacent podcasts. It is the place to go to discover and find everything you need to know about Broadway in podcast form and Broadway adjacent, West End, Sydney, all over the place. So I interviewed my very first producer that I interviewed for my podcast, Dory Berenstein, four-time Tony-winning producer, most recently lead producer of The Prom. And after I interviewed her, I pitched her this idea that occurred to me because when I was researching her, she's just been in the business forever. She's well respected. She knows everybody. And I pitched her this idea where I said, we need to make the Netflix of Broadway podcasts. And basically before we even left the office, we were like, all right, we're doing this. And so she ran with the idea, and it just exploded. We launched in October 2019 with 15 podcasts. And then now we have over 150 and a lot of original radio plays, comedies, dramas, including the normal indie podcasts like what mine originally was. And it's just become the go-to destination for people who love theater. And then now, especially the shows are finding a lot of value in it too, because they can promote their cast and promote their special events or whatever the case is, and it's just this content that people like you and all your listeners, they love to eat this up because it gives them special access to people that they would not otherwise have access to.
How many podcast shows that you can listen to at Broadway Podcast Network? How many shows are there?
Well, I just said it was like we have over 150 listed, and we've been adding more and more original content like drama, scripted comedies, scripted dramas, radio play, that sort of thing. So they're audio experiences. So I recommend like wonderful headphones, and you can just sit down and close your eyes, and you get transported into these other worlds. And we're about to launch something that's got an amazing cast, and we've got the first soap opera that we've ever heard of on podcast form. So we had that. We recorded a lot of this. We got into this in the middle of the pandemic. So at first, once Broadway was shut down, we were one of like only two organizations across the whole internet that we could find that was producing content out of New York and Broadway.
This is upon questions about your favorites. What are we? Can you tell our listeners about this? What are your favorite Broadway musicals to watch?
Now or of all time?
Of all time.
Oh wow. Rent to me is that was one of the cornerstones for me that got me into musical theater, because I'm still like, don't tell anybody, I'm not really a fan of like Chicago and Phantom, and not that I'm not a fan, I just don't like the traditional big dancey number, and I don't have a dance background, so this is part of it. But I like what Rent did to the industry, and in the same way that Hamilton recently changed it too. So it's introducing a new genre, right? So I love watching Hamilton.
I really, really love Hamilton and Rent.
I love watching Rent. I actually love watching Moulin Rouge.
Yes, I really, really love to watch to Rent and Hamilton. The Rent is created by Jonathan Larson. He is one of the greatest Broadway. Yes, and Hamilton is one of my idol, Mr. Lin-Manuel Miranda. I really, really like him. We have no time, and this is the last question. Can you give a little advice to many people who wants to start a podcast like this? And do you have a latest episode or an upcoming new episode on the Chatter podcast that you can promote to our listeners and encourage them to listen?
Yeah. So my advice is keep your audio front of mind, because if you have a poor audio connection, it's really hard to some people get audio fatigue and they can't listen for a long period of time. That doesn't mean you need to spend a lot of money on a microphone. What it does mean is you need to get creative. And when the pandemic, I was mentioning this earlier, that we were recording radio plays during the pandemic, so we would ship people the Yeti Blue microphones that are the super, super popular microphones, and they're very inexpensive. And if you set the right mode, and we would have people build pillow forts. So literally, I've got pictures of Alex Brightman and all these other megastars who are literally like under blankets with pillows all around them, building their own sound booth. And as long as you can get yourself in a space like a walk-in closet or under a bunch of blankets, again, inside pillows, anything that's going to absorb sound, you can do wonders with an inexpensive microphone. So make sure, that's my first piece of advice, is keep your sound quality front of mind. And then the second thing is you've got to talk about something you love, because as soon as you commit to releasing weekly or even every other week, bi-weekly, it becomes work and it's hard, and you're not going to get rich overnight. You may not get rich at all. This is podcasting, and you want to make sure that it's a topic, a subject, it's work that you love to do, because otherwise you're going to get burnt out real fast. So those are my two pieces of advice. And then I guess the episode of my podcast that just dropped today, as we're recording, August 2nd, is Sonoya Mizuno, who is in Cat on a Hot Tin Roof off Broadway. She's one of the main characters in House of the Dragon, the Game of Thrones prequel that's coming out shortly. She was in Ex Machina and Crazy Rich Asians, a bunch of other things. But then for the rest of August, it's all going to be cast from The Kite Runner, which is just going bonkers on Broadway. And then right after that, there's going to be a string of the cast from Wicked. So I've got a couple Elphabas and Nessa Rose, Bach, a couple swings. So yeah, it's going to be a string of 2 back-to-back takeovers.
Thank you. Thank you for guesting to our podcast. We have no time, and it's time to say goodbye. Bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Yes, thank you for guesting to my podcast. Bye.
Bye.
The end. Thanks for listening to the John Clarence Gomez Show.